Good morning. Welcome to my garden. Wanted to read a paragraph and break it down in my own funny way. I'm still learning. I read and mostly I listen. Lots of sources. And I try connect the dots to educate myself. We'll see what happens. Anyway, have you heard of the nearly death experiences? The light of the end of the tunnel. It's funny, sometimes Christian, they talk about, the burning furnace or stuff like that. And I'm like, wow. So this one's going to be about that sort of thing. Out of body experiences of astral projecting. Sometimes you can do it while you're sleeping. Sometimes you can do it while you are awake. I think we need wisdom and experience in these matters in order to be able to control it. I think they come to us when we least expect it, and often we have no clue how we got there. So hence the training and the meditation, quote unquote, and the wisdom. I think it's through wisdom that we will be able to control these out-of-body experiences. And of course, intuition. Intuition, that is the key. This is something we can't teach. You have to learn it by yourself. Words cannot describe it. It's intuitive. You have to find the path yourself. So I'm going to read and then I'm going to break it in my funny way. So it's called Theurgy. Theurgy in English. Theurgia, the rite understood as divine acts or the workings of gods. Theurgy is not intellectual theorizing about God, but the elevation to God. The term is coined by the editors of the Chaldean oracles, but the ancient practice of contacting the gods and ascend to the divine goes back to the Mesopotamian and Egyptian hieratic traditions. Neoplatonic theurgy is based both on the Chaldean patterns and the exegesis of Plato's Phaedrus, Timaeus, and the Symposium, and other dialogues, and thus regarded as an outgrowth of the Platonic philosophy and the Pythagorean negative theology. Therefore, the theurgical praxis do not contradict the dialect of Plato. Theurgy deifies the soul through the series of ontological symbols and synthemata that covers the entire hierarchy of being and lead to the unification and ineffable unity with the gods. Theurgy is based on the laws of cosmogony in their ritual expression and imitates the orders of the gods. For Iamblichus, it transcends all rational philosophy or intellectual understanding and transforms man into a divine being. Okay, that's the paragraph. So it's focused on Neoplatonic theurgy, but theurgy has many names in other cultures. It goes by other names. Theurgy happens in the Vedic tradition. Theurgy happens in the Norse tradition. You see, uh, is just talking specifically that of the Neoplatonists, but it happens all over the place. Um, Exegesis, the Chaldean patterns and the exegesis, it means the critical in-depth interpretation of Plato's writings and Plato's dialogues. When it says the Pythagorean negative theology, again, it's not just in Pythagoras that you find the negative theology. You find it in the Vedas. You find it in the original Buddhism. Negative theology is a methodology of investigation almost. You have deductive and inductive way of knowing things, but there's also retroductive way of finding things, and that's where the negative theology comes in. Analogously speaking, inductive and deductive way of finding a needle in the haystack. You either go straw by straw, you either start looking, and eliminating areas that you already looked, or you use the retroductive, which is you burn away objectivity to go straight to the answer. You burn away the haystack in order to go and find the metal needle. It's a lot faster. So, in order to attain theurgy, if you use the negative theology, it will be a lot faster. Like Iamblichus rightly says, it is not through the way of thinking. It is not an intellectual understanding. It's not, thinking your way that you're going to get there. And it's not also through philosophy. You see, to attain theurgy, it is intuitive, it is an intuitive activity. You have to follow your gut. You have to follow your intuition. Yeah. I think, again, like I said, through practice and wisdom, I think you will find your way. So, if you are able to attain theurgy anytime you want, you become a mover at will, like the original Buddhists used to say. You'll become a mover at will. You can visit the gods, you can walk with the gods, you can talk with the gods. Now, there are synthetic ways of attaining theurgy, artificial ways of attaining theurgy. A lot of people actually do it using stimulants, drugs, etc. They temporarily disturb the signal, like the hi-fi signal that you are, receiving, the signal that's been modulated. If you follow the analogy, the body is like a receiver and it receives a signal, right? And if you disturb the body using these stimulants and whatever, you might demodulate, you might hack the signal, so to speak. Hence you will leave the body and, quote unquote, astral project. That's why religions have mushrooms in their stories and fairy tales and mythologies, and in their murals. You can see in their statues they are carrying bags and there's mushrooms all over the place. They were all tripping, once upon a time. They were all tripping, and that's how they talk to the gods, so to speak. They also built sensory deprivation chambers and submerged themselves in water while tripping. That's how they astral projected. So, through wisdom is the key, and it is an intuitive process without the use of substances. Eventually, you have to, like the original Buddhists say, you have to come to the conclusion through logic and wisdom that the who are thyself first, and you will realize that the self is not the body. It is not your feelings, emotions, perceptions, mental machinations. I mean, all these things are of the material world. And if you are able to subjugate all these things, you'll be closer to Theurgy, to practicing Theurgy. Basically, you will become unassailable. You already are unassailable, in a way, but you will be unifying with divinity, so to speak. You know, no longer the matters of the mortal will affect you if you attain Theurgy. Um, what can I say more about this? Yeah, I think that's it. Oh yeah, an important thing I was almost forgot. Do not confuse theurgy with schizophrenia, because in the case of schizophrenia, it's not you that is hacking the signal. It's not you that is subjugating the signal. No, it's actually something else or someone else, an entity, an excorporated being, a demon. Who knows? They might be trying to hack your signal and messing up with your head. So be very careful. There might be people, saying they're, oh, I'm living my body at will. They are probably, schizophrenic. You know, this is something you control. Theurgy is something you control. It comes from your will. Now, if you're doing it like forcibly, that could be schizophrenia. I was listening to this young man. He was probably a teenager, was still living with his parents and stuff. And he said he was schizophrenic, and he was quite open about it. He said he was constantly listening to multiple voices, giving them orders, suggesting things, talking to him directly, you know. It's quite weird. Something or someone was hacking the signal and messing up with his head, you see. This other person was also quite open to schizophrenia. He said these voices sometimes, wanted to do harm in order to attain the near family. You see, they wanted to attain emotionally, they wanted to attain his family, to harm his family. So if they suggested like unaliving or hurting yourself or something like that, it was to hurt your family, because over the individual they already had power, you see. So they wanted to extend, to have more power. Something about, harvesting negative emotions. I don't know. They fed on negative emotions. So these quote unquote voices might suggest that you commit, these acts of unaliving and stuff, but they would lose power over you, but they would gain, something from the people around you, because it's quite painful to see someone, just unalive themselves. So he also said, this other scientist I was listening, he also said one or multiple voices are specific to every individual. It's almost like the channel or the signal can only be hacked at that moment by those voices. They can't hack others. Suggests that there's a specific, almost password for each signal, and they can access your or someone else, but can't access anybody else's. So each voice is specific to every individual suffering from schizophrenia. You know, it's not that the same can affect multiple people. No, they affect specifically one person. They know the password of the code, of the Wi-Fi password. They know how to hack it. So they affect only an individual, at a time, So yeah, theurgy has nothing to do with that. Theurgy, it's yourself. Through wisdom and intuition, you are subjugating the signal. You are um, ending the false identification with the physical self, and you are only identifying with the spiritual. Again, intuition, you have to understand the spiritual, right? And you can become a walker, a mover at will. People have said they are able to talk to gods, to lesser gods. They're able to talk, you know? It's incredible, It is incredible. It could also happen during your sleep. Theurgy, you know? You can almost be in other realities, having dialogues with other creatures. I think anyway, it's very distinct. When you're dreaming, you understand when it's a dream, right? So anyway, tell me what you guys think. Have a nice day.